If it's Thursday, President Trump's sweeping immigration crackdown faces its first major hurdle as a federal judge temporarily blocks the administration's move to end birthright citizenship, calling it, quote, blatantly unconstitutional. Plus, bipartisanship in the Trump era. I'll talk to one of the House Republicans who met with President Trump yesterday and his Democratic colleague about working together in a narrowly divided Congress and a bitterly divided country. And tens of thousands of people in Los Angeles County are ordered to evacuate as firefighters try to contain a new blaze that has exploded in size over the last 24 hours, burning more than 10,000 acres in one day. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington, where just moments ago, President Trump spoke to reporters from the Oval Office after signing a series of new executive orders on everything from artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency to presidential pardons for anti-abortion protesters. He also took some questions from the press, and we are going to bring that Q&A portion in just a moment. But we do begin with President Trump's sweeping overhaul of the U.S. immigration system taking shape, testing the limits of his authority, his government's resources, and his support in Congress. This afternoon, a federal judge ruling part of that agenda goes too far, temporarily blocking the president's executive order to end birthright citizenship. In his ruling, the judge sided with a group of 4 Democratic-led states, and he had some harsh words for the government during the hearing, saying, quote, "I've been on the bench for over 4 decades. I can't remember another case where the question presented is as clear as this one. This is a blatantly unconstitutional order." Here's Washington State Attorney General, who was part of the coalition of states that sued, speaking outside of court after the ruling. Take a look.
This is about people who the President of the United States was trying to deny their lawful right to be citizens. And babies are being born today, tomorrow, every day, all across this country. And so we had to act now to provide back to the status quo, back what has been the law of the land for generations, that you are an American citizen if you were born on American soil, period. Nothing that the president can do will change that.
In his remarks from the Oval Office moments ago, the president said he wasn't surprised by the judge's decision and that he intends to appeal it. It comes as the president signed a new round of executive orders yesterday on immigration to further crack down on illegal border crossings and undocumented immigrants. Among the actions he's taken on immigration in his first days in office, deploying some 1,500 active duty troops to the southern border, with plans for additional deployments, declaring a national emergency, firing immigration court officials, ending catch and release, resuming border wall construction, expanding removal authorities for ICE agents. His administration has also rescinded restrictions that kept ICE agents from conducting arrests in what are called sensitive locations. We're talking about schools and churches, hospitals. He's directed U.S. attorneys to investigate state or local officials who resist federal immigration laws and expanded authorities for DEA and ATF agents to help carry out deportations. Today, the president doubling down on his immigration agenda, telling global business leaders in Davos in a virtual address that he is taking swift actions to repel a, quote, invasion.
A national emergency on our border immediately halted all entry of illegal border crossers, of which there were many, and began promptly returning the illegal trespassers back to the place from which they came. That action, as you've probably seen, has already started very strongly. I've deployed active duty U.S. military and National Guard troops to the border to assist in repelling the invasion. It was really an invasion.
Meanwhile, new government figures today show border crossings are actually down, with a U.S. official telling NBC News that the number of encounters at the southwest border yesterday was about half of what they typically see in a day. The president's executive actions are also being bolstered by Congress, with the House and Senate passing its first piece of legislation, the Laken-Riley Act. That's aimed at detaining illegal migrants who are charged with nonviolent crimes. Passed with bipartisan support, that legislation is now heading to the president's desk. And joining me now is our team of reporters, NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley, NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, and NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapur is on Capitol Hill. Julia, I have to start with you. President Trump's DOJ was in court today. He was defending its executive order on birthright citizenship, one of the most controversial. The judge now temporarily blocking the order. Talk about what the government was arguing and where things stand.
That's right, Kristen. And the judge did not have to make that decision so quickly because the executive order was not meant to put that ban on birthright citizenship into effect until February 19th. But the judge ruled very quickly, almost as soon as the two sides stopped arguing. We heard from the states. You mentioned one of them was Washington. There were 22 states who have said that this is unconstitutional. They said, look, this is protected by the 14th Amendment. You can't change it without Congress ratifying by a 2/3 majority an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Now, on the other side, the Trump lawyers, or the DOJ lawyers for the Trump administration, rather, basically were just trying to convince the judge not to go too far with the temporary restraining order, not to make it nationwide, and arguing that they could not enjoin the president from taking this action. There was actually very little conversation about zeroing in on this one clause in the 14th Amendment that says anyone who is under the jurisdiction of the United States and is subject to that jurisdiction is considered a U.S. citizen. I thought there might be some squabbling about what that meant because right now there's an exception for children of diplomats, for example. They really didn't get into that. They didn't talk about the fact that the executive order makes children who are born here to unlawful, not only to unlawful mothers, but to people who are here lawfully but temporarily not allowed to be U.S. citizens. They didn't get into all of that. The judge was pretty quick in his decision. Again, this is an 85-year-old judge who was appointed by President Reagan. He's thought to be a conservative. He was very quick to throw this out and issue that temporary restraining order. But it's not the end, Kristen. We can expect this to be appealed and probably go before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The action in the courts right now, Julia, let's talk about something that you pay a lot of attention to on a day-to-day basis. These border encounters, they are down today, as we talked about. Can you explain what exactly is driving that? What are you watching?
Well, look, I've spoken to people on the border who are looking at how low these numbers are. They're comparing them to 2017 when Trump took office the first time. There's a lot of rhetoric that has scared people from leaving their countries. Probably 2 to 3 weeks ago, people didn't want to come to the border knowing Trump was about to take office at this time. We also have to look at what Trump has done across the border, really shutting down the asylum system as we know it. Not only did he shut off CBP-1, but it's now unclear, and in fact, we're hearing they're turning back migrants who show up at legal ports of entry to claim asylum. This is something they have an international obligation to. And so when you shut down every way for a migrant to claim asylum at the southern border, that is going to deter more people from trying to cross. They may be waiting to try to cross later. We also know Mexico is trying to welcome back more of these people who were being turned back. But Kristen, it's all about numbers. Just like in 2017, there was an initial dip and then the numbers rise. And when Border Patrol gets overwhelmed or they can't hold everyone indefinitely, they start being released and more people come. So right now, a lot of very stringent policies on the southern border that could be legally challenged, and it could be that logistically they can't hold up as well.
All right, Julia Ainsley starting us off. Thank you so much for your great reporting, Julia, as always. Gabe Gutierrez, let me turn to you here in studio. Thanks so much for being here. So part of what President Trump is trying to do is to give authorities enhanced powers to basically be able to detain and deport people. What do we know about this, and what are these expanded powers going to look like? Are they making a difference so far?
Yeah, Kristen, you know, we've been reporting for a while now that the plan was for this new Trump administration to ramp up this ICE 287G program, which involved local law enforcement, giving them more powers to help enforce federal immigration law. But now we are learning more details from a top Trump advisor, Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff, very involved in immigration policy, of course. In an interview last night, he talked about the other federal agencies that now will be brought in to help with this effort. Let's listen.
Not only is it going to be ICE engaging these raids, but also they're going to have support from their law enforcement partners in FBI, ATF, DEA, and U.S. Marshals. We're going to leverage the full power of federal law enforcement at President Trump's command and direction to save this country from this occupation.
And that's something, Kristen, that I heard from the border czar, Tom Homan, when I spoke with him a few weeks ago. He uses this word force multiplier. And when you talk about the Department of Defense sending in troops to the southern border, they see that as force multipliers because they need these agents from other agencies because ICE is facing this huge budget shortfall, more than $200 million. They just don't have the manpower to carry out these mass deportations.
It's just so incredibly complicated, Gabe. Talk about the politics of this. Obviously, President Trump started the week, the inauguration, his poll numbers were up, but the politics of this mass deportation as we're starting to see it roll out.
And look, as President Trump will tell you, he feels that his voters supported this, that he won the popular vote, that he won all the swing states, and so they voted for this very immigration policy. And it is true, according to recent polls, if we put up some of those numbers, broadly speaking, the majority of Americans do support President Trump when it comes to that. But when you get into the details, some of this, should you separate families? Should some of the details of these mass deportation plans, when you get into those, people, for example, using active duty military to detain undocumented migrants, the majority of respondents oppose that. Deporting immigrants that came to the U.S. illegally as children, they oppose that as well. So the question will be politically how this plays out once these mass deportation plans get underway. How do they play out across the country? What happens when people see images, perhaps, of what's called collateral arrest, family members, children, potentially, of these, the immigrants with criminal records that they're targeting? If we see images of that happening, how does public opinion shift for that?
It's such a great point, Gabe, because, of course, we know that President Trump understands the power of an image, and that's one of the things that he is paying close attention to. And he talks about how complicated this process is, how expensive it is. Let me turn to Sahil. Gabe, stay right here. I know you're busy, but we want to play that Q&A out, and I want you to stick around for a few minutes for that. Sahil, let's talk about this because Congress is going to have to provide more funding if this mass deportation plan is going to be implemented. Where do those talks stand? And I'm one of the people who's obsessed with the process of it. How is it going to actually play out on the Hill?
It's very much up in the air still, Kristen. The first thing Republicans have to do is come to an agreement on whether they do all of Trump's agenda in one big bill or they split it up into two. They still haven't agreed on that. Once they figure that out, they've got to write a budget, instruct the committees to pass, to write legislation. The actual immigration component of this is not going to be that difficult. They're essentially going to throw money at the administration. I've heard the term or the figure $100 billion thrown around by several key Republicans involved in writing this. They want to give the Trump administration a lot of money to enforce immigration law because remember, all these directives, all these executive orders that Trump puts into place aren't worth much if ICE and the federal government don't have the resources to carry them out. Presidents for decades now have complained that they don't have the resources to enforce the law that Congress has, is asking them to do, which is why you get these prioritization decisions that, have sparked this immigration debate as is. So the first thing they've got to do then, after they craft the budget is pass these bills through committee and then get them through this tiny House majority. When that happens remains to be seen. At this point, senators want to do it in two bills, but it looks like they're going to give the House a chance, Speaker Johnson a chance to do Trump's entire agenda, including immigration, energy, taxes in one bill. If he can't do it by about April, there's going to be a lot of pressure to move forward in two bills.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Sahil. It will be fascinating to see if they can get what the president has called a big, beautiful bill passed, because, boy, are there a lot of components, and we know the devil's in the details there. Let me shift now to the nomination of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And we're learning today that Senator Murkowski saying she's a no vote on Hegseth, not really a surprise. But Senator Wicker is now hinting that Vice President J.D. Vance may need to actually stick around to be a tie-breaking vote. Give us the gut check on where his nomination stands.
It looks like Vice President Vance is not going to be needed for this after all, Kristen, because the Senate just voted in the last hour or so to clear a key procedural hurdle to move Pete Hegseth's nomination forward for Secretary of Defense. The vote was 51 to 49 Republicans have 53 senators. They lost 2 of them, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. Now, Lisa Murkowski issued a carefully worded yet blistering statement stating all the reasons she cannot support Pete Hegseth for this important job. She mentioned his qualifications, his allegations of financial mismanagement at the nonprofit he worked at. She mentioned his opposition to women serving in combat, allegations of sexual assault and drinking, his admitted infidelity, questioned whether he has the judgment for this job. But she and Susan Collins were the only Republicans who defected. 51 other Republicans voted yes, and they only need 50 votes. So at this moment, Pete Hegseth is on course to be confirmed tomorrow, despite all this controversy. And then Senate Majority Leader John Thune is going to move on to other nominees like Kristi Noem for DHS, Sean Duffy for Transportation Secretary. The deck is so heavily stacked in favor of these nominees, Kristen, because there are 53 Senate Republicans, only 2 moderates.
All right, Sahil, great stuff. I know you're gearing up for an incredibly busy time there on the Hill. Thank you so much. Now, as we said earlier, we do have the tape now of President Trump answering questions after signing multiple executive orders in the Oval Office just moments ago. Look.
Mr. President, a U.S. judge temporarily blocks the birthright citizenship order. Do you have any reaction?
No, obviously we'll appeal it. They put it before a certain judge in Seattle, I guess, right? And there's no surprises with that judge.
Mr. President,
Senators Collins and Murkowski have now said they will vote against Pete Hegseth. Are you worried about his confirmation in your reaction?
No, and no surprises there. It's too bad, you know. It's the way it is. Too bad.
And when would you adjourn Congress to make recess appointments, Mr. President?
Well, I'd take a look at that. I'd listen to John Thune. He's doing a fantastic job. We're moving along. The Democrats are trying to delay government, as they always do. They can't help themselves. Even John Ratcliffe, who's very, very strong, very popular, and liked by the Democrats. I guess he gets a lot of Democrat votes. That's taking a long time, and it shouldn't be taking a long time. They're maxing everything out so they can delay everything as much as possible.
So does the President support an effort to use recess appointments if you choose to do that?
I'd be willing to use recess appointments. It's up to John, and we'll see. John Thune's a great guy, great senator, and knows his stuff inside out and backwards. But I would use recess appointments if he wants to do that. Absolutely. The Democrats are just delaying. They always delay.
Mr. President, you spoke with the Saudi Crown Prince yesterday.
Who?
The Saudi Crown Prince. How was the call?
Right.
And they said $600 billion they can invest.
600. I'll ask him for $1 trillion.
You said you're going to ask for $1 trillion. Will Saudi Arabia be the first foreign country you will visit since they invest in that much?
Well, if they do that, I would, yeah. I would be glad to do that. I did it, as you know, 4 years ago. We did $450 billion, meaning the money all goes to American companies, and they purchase jets and they purchase computers and everything else. And we did $450 billion, and I guess we're at 650. And I'll see if I can talk him into it.
I don't think it is again. You showed great confidence in Steve Witkoff. Why you said that you doubt that the ceasefire in Gaza will hold, since you appraised his
well, no, I think he's great,
efforts?
but it's a very tricky place. It's very tricky. We'll see. And if something does happen, they will not be happy.
Sir, follow up on that one. In terms of Steve Witkoff, are you going to put him in charge of Iran's strategy, and do you want him talking directly with the Iranians?
No, but he's certainly somebody I would use. He's done a fantastic job. He's a great negotiator. He's a very good person, a very popular person, gets along with people. I have great negotiators. They have no personality whatsoever, and then I have some that do. Steve has a wonderful way about him, and people like him, and even in this case, both sides like him. And he was able to make a deal. That deal would have never been made without Steve. The Biden people couldn't make the deal. They were working on it for a year and a half. They couldn't make a deal. We got it done prior to the inauguration. We said it has to be before the inauguration. I mean, the deal should hold, but if it doesn't hold, there'll be a lot of problems.
Related to your AI, EO, just hours after you made that big Stardate announcement, Elon Musk tweeted that they don't actually have the money. Is that true?
I don't know if they do, but, you know, they're putting up the money. The government's not putting up anything. They're putting up money. They're very rich people, so I hope they do. And, I mean, Elon doesn't like one of those people, so you're allowed to
Are
do
you
that.
worried that AI is going to replace many American jobs?
No, no. It's going to create tremendous numbers of jobs. It's going to also create a lot of benefits medically for cancer research and other things. It's going to have a huge positive impact. And, you know, we want to be ahead of China. We're right now way ahead of China. David Sachs is one of the all-time experts. You know, that people are amazed that you just met him. I don't know if he's still here. There he is. But one of the most respected people in that world. It's a world. That's a whole different world. And we're ahead of China now because of what I'm doing. And I think it's going to be very successful.
Mr. President, please, you just asked the Davos Forum again that NATO countries should spend 5% of GDP on defense.
Yeah.
The United States don't spend 5%.
Well,
Do you think it should also
so.
apply to the United States?
We're protecting them, you know. They're not protecting us. We're protecting them. So I don't think we should be spending. I'm not sure we should be spending anything, but we should certainly be helping them. But they should up their 2% to 5%. Yeah.
Mr. President, you said earlier during your speech at Davos that you would like to see interest rates come down. How much would you like to see them come down?
A lot.
And will you talk
I'd like to see them come down a lot, and oil prices will come down. And when oil prices come down, everything's going to be cheaper for the American people and actually for the world, but for the American people. So I'd like to see oil prices come down. And when the energy comes down, that's going to knock out a lot of the inflation. That's going to automatically bring the interest rates down.
Are you worried that there's too much going on?
You said that you would demand.
Are you worried that there's too much going on at once if you're trying to bring interest rates down, get the economy back going?
No, it just works that way. I mean, it just economically works that way. When the oil comes down, it'll bring down prices. Then you won't have inflation, and then the interest rates will come down.
You said that you would demand that the interest rates come down.
Well, I would put in a strong statement.
Do you expect the Fed to listen to you?
Yeah.
Are you going to talk to Powell about this and bringing the rates down?
At the right time, I would.
Sir, do you any of the people you pardoned that were participated in the January 6, 2021 attack? Do you plan to meet with any of them or meet with them at the White House?
I don't know. I'm sure that they probably would like to. I did them something important, but what they did is they were protesting a crooked election. And, you know, I mean, people understand that also. And they were treated very badly. Nobody's been treated like that. So I'd be open to it, certainly. I don't know of anything like that, but I think they're going to meet in some of the congressmen, women, want to meet. But I'd certainly be open to it.
Have you spoken to them since you issued the pardons?
I haven't spoken to any of them yet, but I know they're very happy.
Mr. President,
I gave them their life back. Their life was taken away from them unnecessarily and unfairly. I gave them their life back, so I can imagine they probably would like to.
Mr. President, what did you mean when you said that Biden took bad advice and not pardoning himself yesterday?
Well, he did. I think he did, because he pardoned all these people that are crooked as hell. Look, the congressmen, they're crooked. What they did is they destroyed evidence. When you destroy evidence, especially criminally like that, they did it criminally. And the reason they destroyed the evidence is because it proved that I was right. They didn't destroy evidence for no reason. They destroyed it because they found many documents saying that I offered 10,000 soldiers. If they had 500 soldiers or National Guard, there would have been no problem. If they had 200, that would have been. I offered 10,000 if they needed them. There would have been no problem. That's been now totally disproven. And it's also been disproven by Nancy Pelosi's daughter, who has her on tape saying it was her fault, that she has full responsibility for this. And they have all that stuff. They destroyed everything. And they go through a year and a half, 2 years of nonsense. They come up with tremendous evidence, and they destroyed evidence. And Schiff knew about it. That's why he's on there. He knew all about the destruction of evidence. A lot of people said he's the one that got him to do it. And he's a crooked guy, you know, totally crooked politician. And so he's pardoned, and some other people are pardoned. And these are crooked politicians, every one of them. Benny Johnson, what he did is incredible. I mean, he was the leader of the committee, and he did it. Cheney, crying Adam Kinzinger, all of them. They destroyed evidence and deleted everything. There's nothing. There's no evidence now. They're crooked politicians, and they should be punished. You know, that's even in a civil trial, you go to jail for a thing like that. They destroyed every document, from what I understand, every document, because it proved that I was totally innocent.
Mr. President, to send up to 10,000 troops to the southern border, sir?
Yeah. Oh, southern border?
Yes,
When
the
you
border.
say southern border, when I said 10,000 troops, I was referring to the capital.
Oh, I see. And
No,
when
you
is
got it
that?
wrong.
When
I was
do you
referring
plan?
to the
When do you
capital.
plan
I
to do
offered
that?
10,000 troops for the capital before January 6th.
And as for the 1,500 at the southern border, sorry to clarify, what exactly do you want them to be doing right now?
Making sure that the border is safe and secure and that criminals don't come into our country.
Mr. President, do you think that sanctions on Russia will force President Putin to negotiate?
I don't know, but I think he should make a deal.
Mr. President, does it bother you that Elon Musk criticized a deal that you made publicly, that he said that he tweeted that?
No, it doesn't. He hates one of the people in the deals.
Have you spoken to him since then?
No, I've spoken to Elon, but I've spoken to all of them, actually. No, the people in the deal are very, very smart people. But Elon, one of the people he happens to hate, but I have certain hatreds of people, too.
Sir,
You know?
Sir, on China, what do you think Xi Jinping can do on the Ukraine-Russia war?
Which one?
The Ukraine-Russia war. What can Xi Jinping do about that?
China?
Yeah.
They have a lot of power over Russia. They supply energy to Russia. And Russia supplies energy to them. They supply other things to, it's really a very big trade. It's a very big trading partner. But Russia supplies a lot of energy to China. China pays them a lot of money for that. And I think they have a lot of power over Russia. So I think Russia should want to make a deal. Maybe they want to make a deal. I think from what I hear, Putin would like to see me, and we'll meet as soon as we can. I'd meet immediately. Every day we don't meet, soldiers are being killed in a battlefield. And that battlefield is like no battlefield since World War II. And I have pictures that you don't want to see. Soldiers are being killed on a daily basis at numbers that we haven't seen in decades. And it'd be nice to end that war. It's a ridiculous war.
You said that Ukraine's ready to make a deal. Did President Zelensky tell you that?
Yeah, sure. He's ready to negotiate a deal. He'd like to stop. He's somebody that lost a lot of soldiers, and so did Russia. Lost a lot. Russia lost more soldiers. They lost 800,000 soldiers. Would you say that's a lot? I'd say it's a lot.
Mr. President, you said that you wanted to make Dr. King's dream a reality. What's your response to his children and civil rights leaders who say that your DEI orders are a contradiction of his dream and could further drive racial disparities?
Well, I haven't heard that.
Mr. President, you put the Houthis back on the terror list. How do you see the war in Yemen end?
Well, we'll see what happens, but they can't shoot down our ships, the Houthis.
Yes.
And you can't shoot down our ships or any ships, and that's what they've been doing. So they're on the terror list. That's not good for them.
Sir, why did you revoke security protections for former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook?
Well, the same reason I do. When you have protection, you can't have it for the rest of your life. Do you want to have a large detail of people guarding people for the rest of their lives? I mean, there's risks to everything.
So would you support striking Iran's nuclear facilities?
Say it?
Would you support Israel, for example, striking Iran's nuclear facilities?
Well, I'm
or
not
do you
going to
believe
answer
in
that.
diplomacy?
Obviously, I'm not going to answer that question. We'll have to see. I'm going to be meeting with various people over the next couple of days, and we'll see. But hopefully that can be worked out without having to worry about it. It would be nice. It would really be nice if that could be worked out without having to go that further step.
And who are you going to meet with?
Well, I'd rather not say that, but very high-level people. But hopefully that can be worked out. Look, Iran hopefully will make a deal, and if they don't make a deal, I guess that's okay too.
And Mr. President, just to follow up, you said you think the Fed should listen to you. Can you elaborate on why you think it should?
With regard to interest rates?
Correct, yes.
Because I think I know interest rates much better than they do. And I think I know it certainly much better than the one who's primarily in charge of making that decision. But no, I'm guided by them very much. But if I disagree, I will let it be known.
Sir, your tariff plans for China and Mexico are much tougher. The ones for Canada and Mexico are much tougher than the one for China. Why is it softer for China?
Well, China's already paying a lot of tariffs because of me. And when you add them up, I would say, they're paying a lot. They paid hundreds of billions of dollars. They never paid 10 cents until I came along. When I came along, they've paid hundreds of billions of dollars, never paid anything. And so they've already started at a higher base.
Is February 1st the date for Chinese tariffs as well, sir? February 1, or was that just Mexico and Canada?
It's Mexico and Canada, but we're talking about China too. Look, China's sending us tremendous amounts of bad drugs, fentanyl, really bad stuff. Most of it comes through Mexico. And we're losing, I think, 300,000 lives a year because of that. People say 150, 100, 120. I think 300,000 lives a year. Those are old numbers. The lower number is a low number. And we can't have that. They've got to stop sending it. I had a deal with President Xi, but it was a deal that wasn't followed up by Biden, of course, where they were going to issue the death penalty to people that make fentanyl, and that would have stopped it. But we'll have to stop it with tariffs. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Gabe Gutierrez is still with me. Gabe, let's go through a lot of headlines there to unpack. Before we unpack the headlines, we should say his claim that the January 6th committee deleted all of its evidence, just false. They deny that they deleted or got rid of any evidence. In fact, they say they cataloged it and saved it per the rules of the House. Let's, though, tick through some of these headlines. He talked about his openness, his willingness to use recess appointments on his cabinet picks. He said it's going to be up to John. He also, I thought it was notable, said he wants interest rates to come down. He said he's going to strongly suggest that. He thinks the Fed is going to listen to him. The Fed is an independent body. He was asked if he would directly convey that to Fed Chair Jerome Powell. He did express a willingness to do that. He also talked about supporting the possibility of the January 6th convicts who he pardoned testifying on Capitol Hill. And notably, he talked about tariffs at the end. He said that February 1st deadline for tariffs applies to Canada and Mexico, but he said we're talking about China as well. What stood out to you of all of those headlines?
Yeah, Kristen, that's a long list. Look, and talking about recess appointment, that's something that's really come back up in the last couple of days, even after, Pete Hegseth seemed to his progress on the nomination seemed to be getting better over the last day or two with some new allegations that come forward. Look, I think he's using this as a negotiation tactic, as he often does, almost using it as a threat to keep the Republican Party together. John Thune yesterday hasn't embraced the idea of recess appointments. So of course, he's an institutionalist, so it's a question of how all this will play out. But I really think President Trump is really trying to flex some political muscle here, and really, he is the leader of the Republican Party, and if he wants his cabinet picks to go through, he thinks they should go through, regardless of what the Senate thinks, or regardless if Democrats play ball, regardless of he just wants to get this done. And so he's putting that thought out there. With regards to interest rates and his conversations with Jerome Powell, that is actually really interesting because, of course, President Trump has a history of flexing his political muscles, saying he, knows more about interest rates than the Federal Reserve, which is pretty remarkable. I find it interesting. There has been a long history of presidents actually getting involved and trying to influence the Federal Reserve. However, that kind of went away from the Clinton administrations through the Obama administration, and then Trump brought it back. So it's unclear whether Jerome Powell will, he has said before that he would not be influenced by the President of the United States, but Trump, says that he wants to get involved and thinks he can influence the Fed.
And this was something that we saw during his first administration. This was a fixture of his first administration that was very outspoken about wanting interest rates to come down. Let me ask you about tariffs, Gabe, because, of course, the big question looming over his administration is he actually going to impose tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China? Or is this a negotiating tactic? Does he want to renegotiate the USMCA, for example, that trade deal with Canada and Mexico that he himself negotiated during his first term? Is this about reopening that deal and renegotiating, trying to get a better deal?
At this point, I do think it's a negotiation tactic. And, I've spoken with people both inside and outside the administration. This is what Donald Trump does. He's coming in all guns blazing, basically, threatening these tariffs. So far, notable. And all his executive orders he signed a couple days ago, there weren't any tariffs against those three big trading partners. Of course, now he says he's going to study them and asking his administration to look into it. But at this point, it just doesn't seem like something he will do right away. He keeps kicking the can down the road, but he can use that threat to get a lot of, from Mexico, to get a lot of reaction from them, to get them to partner more so with immigration, with, going after these cartels, which, of course, now he's raised the possibility of even sending the military into Mexico. So yeah, I do think it's a negotiating tactic at this point. And, yeah, he either brings it up or he's asked about it each time, and he, continues with that threat.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much for being here, helping us break down all of those headlines. We'll see you tonight on Nightly News. Really appreciate it. Well, coming together, I will talk to two House lawmakers on opposite sides of the aisle about the challenges of bipartisanship in this bitter era of polarization and political revenge. My interview with Republican Congressman Mike Lawler and Democratic Congresswoman Brittany Pettersen is next. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the first few days of the Trump presidency, several Republican lawmakers, including my next guest, have met with President Trump at the White House to strategize about how to pass the new president's agenda. But with a razor-thin majority and a host of must-pass items like raising the debt limit, funding the government, and disaster aid to California, the path to passing anything this Congress is arduous and will likely need to be bipartisan. Joining me now are New York Republican Congressman Mike Lawler and Colorado Democratic Congresswoman Brittany Pettersen. Thanks to both of you for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
We are absolutely thrilled to have this bipartisan conversation. So thanks so much to both of you for making it happen. We do want to get to your bipartisan push for proxy voting for new parents. We're going to get to that in just a moment. I'm really excited to talk about it. I do want to start, though, on a little bit of news of day, if I can. Politico is reporting that congressional Republicans are discussing a deal that would include government funding, California wildfire aid, a debt limit hike, and border security money that would require bipartisan buy-in. I want to ask both of you if it's something that you support. Congressman Lawler, let's start with you. Would you support that?
Certainly. I mean, obviously, we have to keep the government funded. Obviously, the debt ceiling is a major issue that is going to come up in short order. And certainly, we want to provide disaster relief to those impacted by the wildfires. I think anytime you are dealing with legislation and negotiation, oftentimes these things are coupled together. We've had numerous disaster relief bills coupled with other pieces of legislation. So as we move forward, ultimately, I understand Democrats may object because, on the issue of the debt ceiling, for instance, they're going to want to use it as leverage. But the fact is, we have to get these things done, and we have to get out of the cycle of trying to use every little piece of leverage to get more of what we want when we're dealing with so many pressing issues.
Congresswoman Pettersen, what about you? Would you support this agreement, and what do you make of what you just heard from Congressman Lawler?
Well, everything. I mean, supporting California right now is critical. Making sure that we're funding our government and not holding that funding hostage is essential. He already recognized the issue that Democrats are going to have is around the debt ceiling, because if you want to take that away and give handouts and tax breaks to the most wealthy, well, putting it on the backs of middle-class families, that's not something that Democrats are going to be interested in. So I think that that's going to be the sticking point.
So right now, you would not support that legislation, Congresswoman Pettersen?
It's really difficult because you're taking in consideration the whole package. So not something I even knew was happening right now, since I'm out of the loop being here in Colorado until you brought this up.
And sorry to break the news to you here. This did just happen today, so you're not too out of the loop.
Which is a good segue to I think, the point.
Yeah, well, let me ask this follow-up. We talked to California Congressman Ami Bera yesterday, and he said he is willing to come more than halfway to work with President Trump on immigration and the border. He said he's willing to work on deporting all undocumented immigrants with criminal records and to secure the border. Congresswoman Pettersen, is that how you see it? Are those things that you can work with President Trump on and Republicans on?
Look, we know that the border needs to be secure. We have a very outdated asylum system where people are showing up if they want to work here, if they're seeking asylum for every single reason, they're showing up at the border. We need to modernize our process. So I absolutely support funding at the border. I don't support the mass deportation that he started to implement that has brought fear and chaos across the immigrant community. Absolutely don't support criminals being protected here in the United States, so that we can find common ground. As you know, we had a bipartisan bill last year that really hit a lot of these key areas. So if we want to work together in a bipartisan way, I hope that we're able to do so.
Congressman Lawler, let me ask you about something that your House Republican colleague Brian Babin introduced. It's a bill that would ban birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants. Of course, birthright citizenship is enshrined in the Constitution. President Trump signed an order to reverse that. But how would you vote on that legislation, Congressman Lawler?
Look, that's something we will review. Obviously, yes, the 14th Amendment does address the issue of birthright citizenship, though I do think there is question about how it has been abused, frankly, with respect to people who are coming here illegally for the purpose of obviously having children to get them citizenship. So that is something that obviously the courts are going to weigh in on probably rather quickly, given some of the legal challenges that have been filed against President Trump's executive order. But I think it's a legitimate question of discussion. That is not the intention of what the 14th Amendment, was enshrined into our Constitution for. So the question is how it is being interpreted, and certainly if there are restrictions, in fact, on birthright citizenship. So that is something that obviously the courts are going to weigh in on. I would suspect this will probably wind up in the Supreme Court in relatively short order, and we will get a decision ultimately.
And so, Congressman Lawler, just to be clear, you haven't decided how you would vote on that legislation at this point in time, it sounds like.
No, I would have to review the specifics of Brian's legislation, but I do think the broader point obviously is going to be addressed in these court proceedings that have been filed as part of the objection to President Trump's executive order. So I do suspect we're going to get an answer on this. But I do think it's a legitimate discussion point when you're seeing how this has been abused as part of our broken immigration system in recent years.
Okay, let's turn to the reason that both of you are here, the other big reason. In addition to News of Day, I want to talk about the bipartisan effort the two of you are leading for proxy voting for new parents. Congresswoman Pettersen, you're at home right now in Colorado, about to give birth. Congratulations. We wish you a very, of course, smooth process. You are unable to vote right now, though. So let me ask you, under the current rules, Congresswoman, do you feel as though members are being asked to choose between their family and their constituents and voting?
Absolutely. We shouldn't be precluded from doing our job just because you're having a baby. And in my circumstance, well, everybody's circumstance, when you're pregnant, there's a time at which you're actually not allowed to board a plane anymore because it's unsafe. And so I'm in Colorado. I know how I want to vote. We have an easy path forward to make sure that my constituents are represented, as well as after I give birth. And this is a solution that we should be able to figure out together to make Congress work better and be more friendly to families.
Congressman Lawler, let me get your take and why you think this legislation is so important. Do you think that the current rules are basically preventing some of your fellow members from starting families and then potentially keeping some prospective candidates from running, from putting their hat in the ring?
No question. My wife and I had our second daughter just 8 days before this past November's election. And then I had to be back down in Washington a week after the election. So, 2 weeks after my daughter was born, I had to be back down here. Obviously, given our tight majority, I need to be in Washington to vote. And so, I certainly empathize with Brittany and Anna Paulina Luna, who has led on this issue as well, and any expectant mother, and certainly fathers as well. And so, to me, this is an issue where I understand there may be constitutional, challenges pertaining to this, but it's 2025. And certainly technology has changed, and the ability to participate remotely certainly is more readily available today than it was 248 years ago. So I think we need to evaluate this from the standpoint of allowing members to effectively do their job. Do I think this should be abused? Do I think this should be common practice? No. I think obviously it's important for people to be here in person. But there are extenuating circumstances at times, including having children, that really require you as a parent to be there, to be present, to obviously ensure your child's, ability to live. And so that's something where I think we need to be cognizant of that. And I think this is something that should be addressed, as we move forward.
Well, Congressman Lawler, we should say a hearty congratulations to you and your family as well for your new arrival. Let me get both of you to weigh in on this next point, because you kind of spoke to this, Congressman, which is that Speaker Johnson has said that proxy voting is unconstitutional. Starting with you, Congresswoman Pettersen, what do you say to that? How do you respond? Is he right?
Well, the courts that have where this has been challenged as whether or not it's constitutional, it's been thrown out. We actually have language in it that makes sure that this doesn't count towards quorum, which is one of the outstanding issues. So we know that this will be constitutional. We have addressed the concerns. And I also want to point out that Speaker Johnson voted by proxy numerous times during COVID. So this is absolutely constitutional. This is something that makes sense. It modernizes Congress. And we asked the Speaker to bring it for a vote.
Congressman Lawler, let me get your take. And as you just pointed out, the majority is incredibly narrow. Is it really possible to make proxy voting a reality if you don't have the Speaker on board?
Look, that's obviously a challenge. And Speaker Johnson, a constitutional lawyer by trade, certainly has a very strong opinion on this. I know there is litigation on this issue, and we'll see how it unfolds. But I do think it's an important issue. I do join my colleagues in supporting this. I think we have to look at ways to not only modernize the ability to do our jobs, but recognize the realities of life. And we should not be impeded from doing our job and representing our constituents to the best of our abilities just because we have a family. And, especially for my female colleagues, if they choose, obviously, to breastfeed, for instance, that requires you to be there. It requires you to be present. And so this is something where I think we need to be cognizant of this. I think we need to work through legally how to do this correctly. I accept the Speaker, at his word. I think he's sincere about it. It's just a function of how we actually find a positive path forward on it.
All right. Well, I can't tell you how much we appreciate this bipartisan conversation. Appreciate you both being here today, Congressman Mike Lawler and Congresswoman Brittany Pettersen. Hope you'll both come back again soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Good luck, Brittany.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you.
You too.
And still to come, Democrats are about to pick a new party chair in their first major leadership shakeup since losing to Trump in November. I'll talk to one of the newest candidates for the top job about his vision for the party's future ahead of next week's elections. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Since they lost the presidential election, Democrats have been grappling with the question of who is the leader of their party. Well, in just over a week from now, party leaders will elect a new national committee chair. It is a crucially important decision that will lay down a marker about the future of the party and the future of its leadership. Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, Minnesota Democratic Party Chair Ken Martin, and Wisconsin Democratic Party Chair Ben Wickler are leading the pack of candidates, with a large share of DNC members publicly backing one of the three. But in a late race shakeup, former Bernie Sanders campaign manager Faiz Shakir announced his candidacy last week. saying he's looking to shift the conversation to be about regaining the public's trust. Joining me now on set is Faiz Shakir, DNC Chair candidate. Thank you for being here,
Hi,
Faiz.
Kristen.
It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Usually you're on the panel, so this is a very different capacity. We're excited for this conversation. I do want to start off by playing something that you told my colleague Chuck Todd on his podcast
I know what it's gonna say.
earlier. Let's watch that.
Let's talk about what would you like to see the DNC chair race be about? And what do you fear it is going to be about? And are you? And let me ask this: are you a candidate?
Oh my goodness! So I'm not a candidate. I've not done nothing. Unless you're making your.
Do you want to be a candidate? I mean, you have strong feelings about all this.
I do have strong feelings. I do not think I could actually wage a campaign and win. I don't think anybody wants me to be the DNC chair. I firmly believe that. I would love to interject my ideas. So here you go. Thanks, Chuck, for allowing me to interject some ideas.
Well, Faiz, maybe Chuck gave you an idea there. You've changed your mind. So take us in your thinking. What changed for you?
Well, I'm going to test the proposition now. So I jumped in late, and I was frustrated. I mean, both I'm happy, Kristen, that we're talking about the Democratic Party being a working class party. I'm like, great, I've been waiting, for this for my better part of a decade. And then I'm saying, okay, well, what ambitious new ideas do you have? What are you going to do that's different? And I felt very let down, and I was like, okay, well, I have some. Better, late than never, and live with no regrets. Jump in and let's have a shakeup.
And we're going to get to your ideas because it is the seminal point here. What do you say to folks, though, who see you jumping in this late in the race and they say you can't win this late? Do you think you can really win?
Well, I look up at the scoreboard and no votes have been cast. Literally, it's 0. There's time still left on the clock. I get that people feel like they're pledged, or I talk to people. I'm like, no, there's no compulsion of a vote. Just you show up in D.C. next weekend and you follow your conscience. Decide what does the Democratic Party stand for and who's best as a person to lead it. And I humbly would suggest that at this moment, if you elected me as your DNC chair, it would send a message that the DNC is very different right now. Well, they are making a change. This is not status quo. This is a different new thing.
And why do you think you are ready, given the fact that in November you said, no, not for me? What makes you ready for this moment, Faiz?
Well, Chris and I have run 2 major organizations. Bernie Sanders was a $250 million, 100% grassroots-funded organization, 1,200 employees, a unionized workforce, first unionized workforce in presidential campaign history. The other was the ACLU during that time. First 2 years of Donald Trump, I led the ACLU as national political director, $200 million raised, grassroots operation, 50 state affiliates. So I've had experience running major, large organizations, and I give a damn about having a working class party. So those things combined, here I am.
So let me ask you about your vision, because there is this big debate right now inside the Democratic Party. What should the Democrats' vision be? What should their argument be to voters about why there should be a Democratic Congress, why the next president should be Democratic? What would your argument be? And do you run the risk of being too far to the left and outside of where the mainstream of America is?
Well, I'm glad that people are talking about being a working class party, but what does it mean? In my view right now, there's a suffering of a lack of integrity around the brand of the Democratic Party. It feels like to many working class people, I don't know that I trust you. I don't know that you're honest. In a moment, particularly when we're swimming in a sea of selfishness and greed in a ruling class right now where, wealthy people are making deals, they're wondering, you, the Democratic Party, you have been, in your history and lineage, the fighter for the common man and woman. I expect you more now than ever to stick your necks out, not be bought and sold and transacted by the wealthy, but to be a fighter for working people, which to my mind means you're a grassroots operation, because it means that you open your doors and you say regular people are our power, not wealth and money, regular people. So at this moment, you have to transform the nature of what we do to invite people in.
Do you think that Vice President Kamala Harris could have won had she gotten arguably more strategic, might be the better way to ask it, support from the DNC? Was there more that the DNC could have done, do you think?
For sure. If you backtrack, and not just the Harris campaign, but the Biden campaign before that, it was that Biden was taking these large fights. I think you look at these, why corporate America? Why does Mark Zuckerberg not like Joe Biden? Because the Biden administration was taking action. They were literally suing Facebook in court. Why does Jeff Bezos not like Joe Biden? Why did Elon Musk not like Joe Biden? Because they were challenging his union busting. And so they felt aggrieved, the billionaire class. You know what? A lot of people didn't know that. Why didn't a lot of people know that? Because when Biden was taking these large fights on, and Harris alongside him, that you did not have a political operation that was advertising this, engaging in the friction. Even when Joe Biden went to a picket line for the UAW, did you see a DNC mobilized to say, hey, this is our fight? No. And so you saw, in my mind, a big political failure of not accompanying the large working class fights that were actually going on the policy front.
We only have about 30 seconds left. Who do you see as the leader of the Democratic Party right now?
I don't know that there is a natural, which is why this race is so important, because we have to establish the brand, and the brand is struggling with a lot of people right now. So right now, if you want to be a working class fighter, tell me you're taking on corporate corruption. Tell me how you're going to sell and advertise a brand that has lost trust with people to turn their heads and say, hey, give us a second shot. We're going to lick our wounds and say the working class deserves a champion in this moment who understands what your life is and what your struggles are. Give us a chance, and I think I'm that person to do it.
All right, Faiz, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you, Kristen.
Come on back, and good luck next week. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. We are back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now, but the news continues with Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.